session to an end, but now yet another very, very powerful session with our honorable guest, Mr. Piyush Goyal, sir, who's going to be coming in just about a couple of minutes. So I would request you all to kindly remain seated while we are going to be playing a video right here.
"75 years of progress, 75 years of freedom, 75 years of seeking excellence and world leadership." The Institute of Chartered Accountants of India has enthusiastically supported and honored the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav celebrations of the Indian government. ICAI raised awareness of India's freedom struggle and our responsibilities towards maintaining that freedom. We challenged Indians to go green. The ICAI Tree Plantation Drive renewed our pledge to cover the Indian subcontinent in greenery. Leveraging our core strengths, ICAI also drove a financial and tax literacy drive called Vittiya Gyan ICAI Ka Abhiyan. This pan-India campaign sought to saturate every level of society with important financial education, and this example of public involvement, Jan Bhagidari, exceeded expectations. Accountancy is now a greatly desired profession. A mega career counseling drive opened new vistas for aspiring students, and ICAI gave CA students an opportunity to present their views in return through the elocution competition. Webinars covered a range of topics germane to the celebration of India's vision for the future. As the nation continues to dream and celebrate our progress, ICAI stands by the Indian people, celebrating 75 years of freedom, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, together.
So greetings on Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. And just so that each one of us know as to when is it that this Mahotsav started until when it will continue. So on the 15th of August this year, 2022, India completed 75 years of independence. So if you go back to 15th of August 2021, that's when we entered 75th year. So 75 weeks prior to that, that means on 12th of March 2021, and there's a significance to 12th of March as well. That was the anniversary of Dandi Yatra. Dandi Yatra or Dandi Journey was the one that Mahatma Gandhi, father of the nation, had taken from the Sabarmati ashram. When he returned from South Africa to India, he then set up an ashram in Sabarmati. So at the age of 60 plus, Mahatma Gandhi, with about 72 people, started from Sabarmati ashram to Dandi, which was a coastal area. And then those 70 people became a huge congregation. And that's why Prime Minister started Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav then, and it will continue till 15th of August next year, 2023. And the next 25 years, we are calling Amrit Kal. So it's very nice that it is during the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav that India also has the honor for the first time to host World Congress of Accountants. Thank you very much once again to all the delegates. We really appreciate your presence here. This is day 3. Tomorrow it will be day 4. With time, things fly. It was just the other day we said hello and welcome in the opening ceremony. So every second is one-time offer. Make sure that you meet new delegates, you network, you use technology, the World Congress of Accountants mobile app, and you also participate in the amazing games that we have for you. So I will come down in just a bit, and if anybody wants to share If you've actually had a chance to go down to the activity zone, what was your experience? Feel free to share. But I can tell you what's the next session coming up for you right here in Jasmine Hall at this beautiful Geo World Convention Center. So this is a plenary session. So everyone, please come, join. And the topic is navigating the global economic recovery. So in this session, we have two parts. The first part, half an hour, is where in just a bit, we're expecting CA Piyush Goyal to join us. One of our CA fraternity. He is holding 3 important portfolios in the current Modi government. So he is the Union Minister of Commerce and Industry. He's the Minister for Consumer Affairs, Food and Distribution as well. And then textiles. So we thank our farmers when we talk about agriculture. We thank our weavers who give us clothes. So Honorable Minister is also the Textiles Minister. Not just that, he's also the leader of the House, Rajya Sabha. I did tell you the other day that Indian Parliament is a bicameral legislature. We had the Speaker of Lok Sabha, that's the lower house. And today we'll have the leader of the upper house, Rajya Sabha. So that'll be half an hour. And right after that, we'll have panel discussion on the same topic. And we have the Honorable Minister with us. Please welcome CA Piyush Goyal. Thank you very much, Piyush ji, and welcome to World Congress of Accountants 2022. A chartered accountant, Honorable Union Minister of Commerce and Industry, Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, and Textiles, Government of India. And as I was telling you, CA Piyush Goyal is also leader of the upper house, Rajya Sabha. Indeed, a pleasure having you with us. And I'd like to request CA Dr. Debashish Mitra, President ICI, and CA Aniket Talati, Vice President ICI, to welcome Piyush ji with a bouquet of flowers. So the topic of this plenary session is navigating the global economic recovery. How from global recession due to COVID pandemic, we can now move to global economic recovery. And more importantly, what's the role of the accountancy profession as a trusted partner of the business community in this recovery? So I'll invite CA Dr. Debashish Mitra, President ICI, to first share his welcome address.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very, very good afternoon to you. If you see the smile on my face, it is a smile of great pleasure to have Mr. CA Piyush Goyal here with us. It's also a smile of great relief that he could make it physically here with us. Because until the last moment, he was saying that we'll come virtually, and we were trying to convince him that you must come and be here with us, physically. And so kind of him. This is sitting next to him. Is a person, I think, who requires no introduction. Aniket Talati, the Vice President of the Institute. You see, the topic today, navigating the global economic recovery. Nobody can speak on this topic better than this gentleman, CA Piyush Goyal. But let us, to the international audience who are here, and who may not be very conversant with him. You see, let me just tell you, he is presently the Honorable Union Minister of Commerce and Industry, Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, and Textiles, Government of India. So you see, he is a very powerful man in the government. But to many of us who are chartered accountants, we have always looked up to him as a rank holder chartered accountant. He has had the second All India rank in the chartered accountancy examination. And I don't know, Piyush ji, whether this, this is a rumor floating. You have to confirm whether it's right or wrong. It appears, we were told that when you got a second rank, you were convinced that you deserve the first. So you went and met the president of the institute and said that why you did not give me the first. Right? So I don't know. You see, you have to convince that. You see, you have to confirm that. But you see, for us, you know, Piyush Goyal, the rank holder, is a poster boy of the profession. And we are extremely glad that he's here amongst us. There was this year, and again to the international audience, let me say, there was this year when CA Piyush Goyal was delivering the budget speech in the Lok Sabha. And let me tell you, the whole chartered accountant community, even those who had no interest on the budget, they had all put on their TV, listening to this great man, is he delivering the budget speech, and feeling as if the profession has entered the Lok Sabha, and you see, seeing him making the whole profession proud. His comment, I was looking around as to whether he had some, written notes or whatever. If you see that, he speaks extempore and his thoughts are very clear. He makes a complex subject look so easy. But the other day, we surprised Piyush. He was in San Francisco about a month back. And he was there to inaugurate 6 representative offices of the US, in the US, of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. And this inauguration was taking place at 3 o'clock in the Indian time, in the morning. I and Aniket Talati, we were there at 3 o'clock in the morning, totally suited, you see, trying to welcome Piyush ji, even though it was 3 o'clock in the morning. And we thought that he will not notice that we were there. Piyush ji starts his lecture. And he says, I am impressed by the leadership of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He says, the president and vice president sitting together early in the morning, and committing themselves to the well-being of the profession. What else can you do, expect? And that is what Piyush Goyal is to us. He honors us by his kind presence today, and I'm sure he will enthrall us with his deliberations. I will not take much of your time. May I now request Piyush Goyal ji to kindly come and deliver his address. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Debashish Mitra, President of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. I think that was a little more generous than required. Shri Aniket Talati, the Vice President of the Institute, all the distinguished members of the Central Council of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, the regional councils, all the delegates from, I'm told, over 105 countries who have assembled here today, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a matter of great privilege for me to be here before you to discuss the very, very critical and important subject of navigating the global economic recovery at this 21st World Congress of Accountants. It's probably for the first time that this has come to India, and I would like to add my warm welcome to all the international delegates who have joined us in my home city of Mumbai today. When we look at the current situation all around us, I'm reminded of the 1985 book, Leaders, the strategies for taking charge, in which the theory of VUCA, VUCA, was articulated by Warren Bennis and Bert Vanis. In fact, Bert Vanis, at that point of time, a lot of people thought that it was the US military which has come out with this theory of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. But it was brought out in the context of changing times, challenging times, and leadership was encouraged to think beyond the present and today. The world is continuously going to be in a state of flux. The rate of change is very rapid. One can't envisage what's going to happen today evening, tomorrow, the week after, the month after. And unexpected challenges are being faced by the world constantly. We face it in our day-to-day lives. We face it in our business, in our profession. Nations face it at the macro level, whether economic, social, political. And in this very volatile situation, where uncertainties present themselves to us, where we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, there are so many unknowns, so many things that we had least expected happening at a point of time most inappropriate, where there are multiple key decision factors. The complexities are so humongous that preparing yourself to face these challenges, these uncertainties, becomes even more complex. And one really doesn't know the impact of every event. There's a lot of ambiguity around what is happening in our lives, what is happening in the world. In this situation of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, true leaders are born. Leaders with a vision. Leaders with a deep understanding, who are able to decongest the situation, demystify what is happening around us. Leaders with a clarity of vision to know what is the way forward. And leaders with agility who can take tough decisions quickly on their feet and find solutions to the problems that all of us face in our circumstances. So you have VUCA leaders also, leaders with a vision, with an understanding, with deep clarity and agility. And I think all of us sitting before me are such leaders, are leaders of tomorrow who are going to help this world navigate this global economic crisis that we see all around us today. The accountancy profession has that capability, has that educational skill, has the deep understanding which is required to change tomorrow, to change what the world is going to be like tomorrow. Amidst global economic uncertainty, We have supply chain disruptions which continue in the post-pandemic period. Inflation is rearing its head in most parts of the world. In fact, the developed countries are seeing inflation at 40-year highs, 30-year highs, 5 times, 8 times the highest that they've seen or what their norm is. There's an energy crisis in different parts of the world. Food security has become an important area of discussion and debate. Amidst all these challenges, some of them brought upon countries by bad economic management, I think India provides the bright, shining spot in the world economy where deft handling of the COVID pandemic, very reasonable measures taken to sustain and grow the economy despite the challenges of the once-in-a-century pandemic, where macroeconomic fundamentals were given a strong focus, where inclusive well-being of society and every section of society was taken care of so that no person, howsoever marginalized he may be, howsoever disprivileged he may be, is left behind. Where very deft handling of the geopolitical conditions around us has been witnessed over the last couple of years, where we are working to a plan, to a vision to make India a developed nation by 2047, to take prosperity to 1.4 billion Indians. I believe we have demonstrated to the world that despite any amount of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, any challenges that ambiguity may bring in, India has the capability, India has the leadership, India has the skills that is required to navigate economic recovery, not only for India, but as Honorable Prime Minister says, India believes that the world is one family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is the theme of our G20 presidency. And for every Indian, it is very natural not only to care for himself or herself and our families, our friends, our near and dear ones, but to care for the world, to care for society. And it is in this context that when we take up the G20 presidency from 1st of December, we have articulated the theme, One Earth, One Family, One Future. And in this 75th year of India's independence, celebrated across the country, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, while we have rejoiced 75 years of achievements, the focus of Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi and the people of India has been to craft a future, to plan, to envision where we wish to see India as we celebrate 100 years in 2047. The world economy today is looking up to Indian economy to steer growth, to promote progress, to show the way. They recognize that with strong economic fundamentals, with a large young population, our demographic dividend, a consumer base unmatched anywhere in the world, skill sets and management abilities of our young boys and girls, the fire in the belly that each Indian has today to work for a better future for his or her families, for our nation. India will lead the way in the next decade, 2 decades, as some economists have said, probably for the rest of the century. And why do I say India has the ability to lead the world? A lot of it is to do with our culture, our tradition, our rich heritage, our history, from where we draw inspiration, from where we draw our lessons. While the world focused on consumption-led growth, and a lot of it was to do with wasteful consumption, India focused on sustainability. Every Indian respected nature. India believes in intergenerational equity. We believe that it is incumbent on each one of us to leave behind a better planet than the one we have inherited. A better world for our children, for the next generations, than what we received. And therefore, when the concept of lifestyle for environment, was presented before the world by Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, when he spoke of sustainable lifestyles, when he spoke about the circular economy, it came from within, it came from our actions, it came from what India has consistently believed in. The world today recognizes what India has been articulating as the only way forward if we have to save the world from climate change and the impacts of the very, very serious impacts of climate change. And I'm delighted that we are all committed towards working for a better future, working for a better life, not only for every Indian, but for the world at large. And we as accountants are the custodians of this vision. We will be required from time to time to validate the progress of this vision. We will be required to recognize whether all that the world has promised, all that is agreed amongst nations is truly being implemented. Because ultimately, we sign the balance sheet, we certify the true and fair picture. And the true and fair picture today cannot be just in the numbers. The true and fair picture, the reality, is also very complex. We'll also have to factor in all the various elements that matter, all the various elements of any complex organization. It could be a simple business, it could be a nation's accounts, it could be the world's reality. And we as accountants have a very important role to play in showing the mirror to the world, in showing the reality. And in this day and age, when world economies are under stress, I'm delighted to see the wonderful program that was drawn up for the 21st World Congress of Accountants. I was running through some of the subjects that were discussed, some of the articles in your book, and clearly I can see that we as accountants recognize that enhancing trust and confidence in various ways. It could be in information flow, it could be about sustainability, could be about wealth creation, it could be about reporting. Each of the subjects that I am seeing here, the regulatory frameworks in which we work, the digital world where emerging technologies are helping us find solutions to the various problems of business and our lives so that we can make it easier to do business. We can help ease of living for the common man. Every session here, whether it's on technology, whether it's on innovation, whether it's on entrepreneurship, is something that resonates with the accountancy profession. In the global economic recovery, as the world tackles the problem of inflation, as the world prepares itself for better energy security, food security, as we vision the future where innovation and technology is going to drive growth, it is the responsibility of all of us accountants to work with government, with institutions, regulators, businesses, industry, in various aspects. It could be the achievement of sustainable development goals. It could be about growth, not only in numbers, but in terms of lifestyle, in terms of prosperity. We will all have to embrace certain best practices. We will all have to support resources that are required to make our profession contemporary. We'll have to promote the small and medium industries in their contribution to the economy in terms of jobs, in terms of economic activity. And we will all have to collectively bring in the highest levels of ethics and good standards, both in the working of businesses and government and in our own reporting. But I am very, very confident that each one of us sitting here before me is a global leader, a person conscious of his responsibilities to the world. And through these challenges, through these uncertainties, our role will only get bigger and more important. We will have to become contemporary, remain more focused on remaining abreast with technological innovations. We'll have to embrace the digital world. I'm glad that the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India has also been augmenting the quality of reporting that we as chartered accountants are required to do. And I'm sure the world must have noticed that as a regulatory body of this profession, the Institute of Chartered Accountants is a role model for other institutes to follow. I'm sure the global collaborations that you are working on, I'm sure the 77 odd offices that you have across the world will now grow to 100 very quickly. Only day before yesterday from Bengaluru, I was privileged to launch the castartups.org, a new initiative by our institute members to promote entrepreneurship, to promote our startups. And I see that Mr. Talati's father has written a very good article on enhancing the startup ecosystem in India in our booklet for this World Congress. And clearly, this shows that our profession is live, understands the needs of tomorrow, recognizes where the growth engine is coming from. I would urge accountants from all across the world to come together, probably even envisage forming an international body of accountants which can try and harmonize the standards of accounting, harmonize the standards of reporting, our regulatory standards, our standards of high ethics in the conduct of our profession, so that as a body of professionals, as a body of accountants, we are able to help businesses and the governments of different parts of the world work towards synchronized accounting, which is also going to help in forging partnerships between nations, like-minded nations, who trust each other, who can work with each other. And I do believe, going forward, the acronym that India has earned as a trusted partner, particularly for the work during COVID, where India did not let down a single customer anywhere in the world for any good or service. Indian businesses met every commitment that was made to anybody in the world for any merchandise, for any service, for any back office operation, for any R&D work. India was at the forefront of the collective fight against COVID. And today, more and more countries want to engage with India. They want to have economic partnerships. They want to do free trade agreements. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a reflection of the times to come. And we are all accountants. We can do the maths, we can do the calculations better than anybody else. And if one was to see the progress made by India in the last 25 years, 30 years, whatever time frame any of you wants to pick up, you will find that over the last 25 years, the Indian GDP has grown by about 11 times in US dollar terms, from about $270 billion to over $3 trillion today. I suggest you do the maths for the next 25 years. And this is on a business as usual case, given the fact that today we provide the largest delta of opportunity between where we are now and where we will be in 2047. We have an opportunity to fast-track economic growth in India, for which all the building blocks are currently being prepared. You see the large focus on infrastructure creation. You see the large focus on having strong macroeconomic fundamentals. You see the focus on building the industrial base through ease of doing business, through reduction of compliances, decriminalizing various laws, making it much more attractive to come and do business in India. And I'm reminded of a colleague, chartered accountant, with whom I was doing some research over the last 15, 20 days, which he has just presented as a research paper only a few days back. If you were to compare the economic returns or the growth of the top 500 companies listed on the stock exchange between four large economies of the world, the United States of America, China, Japan, and India, you will find that over the last 20 years, India outperformed all the other three competitors. And nearly 1 out of 4, friends, nearly 1 out of 4 of our top 500 companies listed in the BSE 500 index has given a 20% CAGR return consistently for 20 years. 20% CAGR for 20 years, which he calls 2020. Whereas in none of the other countries, in fact, our northern neighbor, probably it's 2 or 3 companies only. Even in the most developed economies of the world, no other country has been able to give the kind of returns that Indian corporates, Indian businesses have given to their shareholders, to their investors. And that is the big opportunity that India holds. And that is the reason I can safely predict that India will help the world navigate economic recovery. India will lead from the front, because nowhere else in the world, my friends, is there a market which will absorb maybe 200 million dishwashers or 200 million washing machines or maybe 200 million automobiles. Show me one other part of the world which has a market of the dimension and size of India. Show me another country whose inflation today is half of what it used to be 10 years ago. You will not find a single parallel anywhere in the world. Fastest growing large economy is a tag that every Indian collectively has earned for himself or herself and for our nation. And therefore, friends, let us meet the changing needs of tomorrow, the demands of tomorrow, for a resilient economic growth, for a sustained economic recovery. Economic recovery will happen when all of us from all the countries in the world work together so that we can recover faster. As they say, what we can do together, we cannot do in isolation. And therefore, let us all work towards global recovery. Let us all work to strengthen sustainability. Let us all work to bring about higher and better standards and global collaborations in our work, so that going forward, global solutions will come out of our global leaders assembled in this room here today. My best wishes to this World Congress, and I am very confident that each one of you 6,000 odd delegates who have come from across the country and the world will go back re-energized, recharged, reinvigorated for the resurgence that the world is going to see in the days and years to come. Thank you very much.
A standing ovation, ladies and gentlemen, please. A very, very brief words of thanks, Honorable Minister C.A. Piyush Goyal ji. Sir, what better endorsement of the love, respect, regards that the entire profession has for you, that on a Sunday afternoon in a city like Mumbai, we have a full house eagerly waiting to listen to our Honorable Minister Piyush Goyal ji. Sir, the profession is proud of you, and as the President said, you are the pride poster boy of this profession. You are what we all look up to. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing about VUCA and stating that each one of us has the leadership capacity to take the world forward. Sir, I can only state what you mentioned about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one world, one family, one future. Yesterday we had so many institute leaders come and meet President sir and myself. And what a lot of them came and told us was, after coming to India, we feel that we as accountants are also one family, sir. So that culture has resonated throughout this accounting world. We are truly Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And sir, in this Congress, we have all resolved to make India a global service delivery hub for accounting and professional services. And startups are going to be truly promoted, not just by us accountants, but ICI will also put all its might, sir, behind this startup ecosystem. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Honorable Minister Piyush Goyal ji for coming here today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I now request the Honorable President and Vice President of ICI to present CA Piyush Goyal with a memento as an expression of gratitude on behalf of entire audience here. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Like the Honorable Minister said, it is a VUCA world, but perhaps this is an opportunity to also bring forth VUCA leaders. So we continue with the same theme, navigating the global economic recovery. We have already heard the minister's view as to what's the recipe to create a resilient, sustained economy. And the VUCA leaders will ensure that. Here, the VUCA could well be vision, understanding, communicate with care, and agility. So we have now a panel discussion on the same topic. And in this panel discussion, we invite your questions and answers too, so that the moderator could access your questions through technology and put it to the esteemed panel. You can go to your World Congress of Accountants mobile app, program, schedule this session on day 3, participating, and then you can ask a question by just typing it and press submit button. It will come to the tab that will be given to the moderator, and she, on behalf of the audience, could pose some of those questions, time permitting, to the learned audience. So let me now invite on stage the moderator for this session. Please welcome CA Sonal Bhutra Malu. She is an anchor and senior analyst with CNBC TV 18. I would also like to invite the panelists of the session. Please welcome Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, Member, Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. May I invite on stage Mr. Dinesh Kumar Khara, respected Chairman, State Bank of India. Please welcome on stage Mr. M. Ayan Koze, Chief Economist and Director of Prospects Group, the World Bank Group. And may I also invite Mr. Kamlesh S. Vikamse, past President with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Thank you, everyone. So we look forward to your views on the topic, navigating the global economic recovery. It's over to the moderator, C.S. Sonal.
Thank you so much. And it's such a pleasure to be here amongst this August gathering where we are going to be discussing what leads to the recovery in a post-pandemic world, what's the outlook on the global economy, and a lot more with my esteemed panelists as well. So I would not like to waste any time and get started on this one. Mr. Sanyal, first up with you. It's a World Congress of Accountants. We are talking about a global backdrop. With your opening remarks, what would you like to tell us the state that we are in after pandemic, then the crisis that we went through? What is the global outlook looking like?
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me here. And I look forward to this conversation. Now, the important thing to remember is that we went not only through 2 years of great difficulty because of COVID, but that uncertainty has left behind a large amount of wounds on the world economy. And then we were hit by this shock on energy, the war in Eastern Europe, and so on. And what we have ended up with here is, as the Honorable Minister was saying, is a genuinely uncertain picture of the future. So in that context, I would say that, and forecasts are always difficult activity, but this year we are supposed to be growing the world economy is supposed to be growing by a little over 2%. Next year it's expected to grow at about the same level. So you're talking about somewhere in the 2.5% range, thereabouts, both this year and into next year. So in that context, the fact that India is going to grow at about 7% this year and maybe somewhere in the range of 6.5%, maybe even as high as 7% next year, obviously looks very, very good. But let me say that the amount of reforms we have done over the last decade or so has meant that this economy is actually capable of growing at somewhere in the range of 9%. If, and I'm using a strong, if we get a clean road ahead of us. Now, this is not a situation right now where we want to press the accelerator hard. There are limits to how much faster than the rest of the world you can grow. For the simplest reason, if we keep growing faster in an environment where the rest of the world is decelerating, obviously, our exports will not be able to keep up with our imports. So in that circumstance, in a circumstance where the rest of the world is dramatically tightening monetary policy, there are limits to how much faster than the rest of the world we can go. But nevertheless, let me say two things. First, that our internal economy is in good shape. Our macroeconomic stability indicators are very good shape. Our inflation, although it is slightly above our band of 2 to 6%, is much, much below even that of most developed countries. And most of our other indicators on debt and so on are also well in control. Now, as I said, if we get an open stretch like we did, say, in the period 2002 to 2007, before the global financial crisis, in that kind of environment, we would be able to grow by, my estimation is somewhere in the range of 9%. But that's not a bad thing. But as I said, we have to be careful to press the accelerator at this point in time. And I think the Reserve Bank and other monetary managers are quite correctly will maintain order going forward. But still, growth rates in the range of 7% is nothing to sniff at, especially if we can sustain it in this environment. Now, there are a few things, before I end, to say that we have been structurally investing in over the last 8 years. First of all, we have invested in the frameworks, physical frameworks of growth. That's physical infrastructure. Dramatically increase the number of airports in this country, the amount of highways This building that we are having this event in did not exist 18 months ago. And in the next 18 months, this city will be completely transformed. There is a underground railway system that will come on stream. There's a line number 3, you may be aware, that's being built from, it's a 22-kilometer or 25-kilometer length from starting in Kaf Parade going all the way to Goregaon. And I believe the moment it is fully finished, it will be the world's most heavily used metro line. Similarly, we have a brand new airport being built. There's already a 20-kilometer link to the mainland that's almost completed. There'll be a road along the sea face that is already being built, which will completely change the way we think of the transportation system. I'm just pointing out to you, just this city alone is going through a makeover. And then just imagine this is going on all over the country. So this is the physical infrastructure. Then comes the soft infrastructure as well. In the last 7-8 years, we have finally created a common market for this country through GST. Think of it as an FTA that India signed with itself. We created the framework for insolvency and bankruptcy. So finally, we could have creative destruction. That's important for an entrepreneur-based economy. We anchored our macroeconomy through an inflation targeting framework. Thank God we did it, because if we hadn't done it, we would have a lot of credibility problems right now. And let me say, we will do similar things going forward. And in that, our accountancy profession has a very big role to play, because one of the important things of all of this is the framework of trust, which the accountancy profession brings to the table, the framework of trust and governance. And if anyone doubts this, let me say that the recent collapse of FTX hopefully will, put all doubts to rest. That, even in the most developed countries in the world, this is something you cannot take for granted. So this is something we need to protect. And here in India, we take it very, very, very seriously.
Okay, point taken. And we hope there's no traffic on the road that we're talking about here. Mr. Khara, let me come to you, because we've been talking about higher inflation rates. We are talking about monetary tightening. These points have been in discussion for a long time. Banking sector has come out progressively. This quarter has been one of the best for banking names in the last 7 years. What is the global setup looking like today from a banking perspective? How can accountancy really be the contributor here?
Thank you very much for getting me over here. Well, of course, when it comes to what you mentioned in terms of the banks being in a very healthy condition and have reported good results this quarter. Well, of course, I think the first and foremost for any bank would be the right recognition of its asset quality. And for there, I think the accounting profession has a lot to contribute in terms of identifying. It is beyond the numbers. It is actually what even Honorable Minister also mentioned, that beyond numbers, the kind of confidence which accountants give in terms of health of a particular entity, it goes a long way in terms of building the trust in the numbers which are being presented before the boards. So I think to that extent, the accounting profession has certainly contributed in terms of identifying the quality of the assets which are sitting in the books of various banks. And as it is, banks are the custodian of trust when it comes to money, which is being handled on behalf of the depositors. So I think to that extent, accounting profession has a lot to contribute in terms of ensuring that the stability of the system is ensured. And also, when it comes to, for any bank, it comes to capital. Capital is the raw material for any bank. Unless and until there's a capital, they cannot really grow. And the confidence of the investor is essentially coming from the kind of reports which are being generated by the auditors, and which becomes a very integral part of our assessment by the investing community across the globe. I would also like to draw attention to the fact that when Honorable Minister indicated that there is a need for convergence of accounting standards across the globe, perhaps it makes all the more relevance for an economy like ours, which at the current situation is at a cusp when it is becoming a global economy already. It has already become a global economy, and going forward, we expect that we will be moving ahead in terms of the league table of the global economies, and soon we will be inching towards one of the top three economies. And if at all that is a kind of a situation, we expect that a lot of global capital will move in to the country, and for that kind of a confidence, I think it is the accountants who will have to give that kind of a confidence to all the investors across the globe. So I think the way I look at it is that it is accounting is a backbone for any commerce and trade, and the kind of confidence which it can give to the readers of the balance sheet is something which is not comparable anywhere else. So I think to that extent, it's a great profession, and it is actually it holds the beacon when it comes to the growth of any economy is concerned. Thank you.
Oh, yes, and that's the idea with this community and the conference that we're organizing here as well. Mr. Kose, let me come to you now. World Bank's idea, I wanted to understand that considering the current global setup that we are in. We're talking about, again, higher inflation rates, higher interest rates, capital, as Mr. Khara mentioned. It is coming at an expensive cost now. In that case, you think right now, global economy is heading for a recession, or there is some recovery that we are seeing, which is underway right now?
Thank you. And let me thank the organizers for inviting me here, this wonderful city, Mumbai. Now, global economy is facing multiple challenges. I'm going to focus on just 4 of them. The first one, when we look around the world, 3 main engines of global growth, the United States, the Euro area, and China, they are all struggling in terms of generating growth. These 3 economies together account for more than 50% of global output and more than 60% of global growth. So the fact that they are all 3 have their own unique challenges obviously not augur well for the next year. The second important challenge, the minister also discussed, very high inflation in advanced economies, decades-long, the decades high inflation, the multi-decades high inflation. In emerging market developing economies, again, very high inflation. And when you look around the world, the inflation targeting economies, pretty much in all of them, inflation is above target. That has multiple drivers, but those drivers are not going to disappear anytime soon. So there is a possibility of inflation being persistent. The third important challenge is how financing conditions are getting tighter, in the sense that you have interest rates increasing around the world. In fact, we are in the midst of most synchronous interest rate hikes in the history of the world. And that will, in all likelihood, continue into next year. Interest rates will remain elevated. And finally, we have serious geopolitical challenges, and those challenges create significant uncertainty, and that uncertainty also accompanied with food insecurity, energy insecurity, and in many parts of the world, in advanced economies as well as some developing economies, there are repercussions of that we are seeing. So in a nutshell, we are expecting weaker growth, persistent inflation into the next year, and probably volatility in commodity markets and financial markets.
So it doesn't look like a clean road for the global economy, at least. Mr. Vikamseth, my question is to you now. We are here, a lot of accountants together, more than 6,000 delegates across the world. When we are talking about convergence of accounting standards or accounting policies across the world, what kind of opportunities does it throw up, especially in the current global economic landscape that we are in?
Hello. Yeah, at the outset, I'm extremely thankful to the organizers of World Congress of Accountants for having me here. And before I start, Sonal, if you permit me, I would first like to place our appreciation
Yes.
as an accounting profession to the medical profession. Because during those 2 challenging years of COVID, it was the medical profession who stood up to the challenges. And what we have assembled here, 6,500 people, is thanks to them. And thanks to the fact that vaccines were given to us, and therefore we are all assembled over here. So we must put our word of appreciation for the medical profession first. Now, you asked me a question about the accounting profession globally and as far as India is concerned. So let me tell you, IFAC, which is the International Federation of Accountants, is basically a federation of all the institutes across the world. We have a single voice across the world. They set standards. So the IFAC sets the auditing standards, the education standards, the ethical standards, and education standards. So they set all the standards which the Indian Institute or every jurisdiction in the world follow that standard. So basically we are all speaking the same language, if I may use that word, as far as business is concerned, financial reporting is concerned. So what the minister mentioned about the fact that there should be harmonization, definitely the move is towards harmonization worldwide so that businesses anywhere in the world can, recognize the financial statements of jurisdiction of each other. So having said that, of course, I can share some, thoughts on the accounting profession as well during the COVID period. When the COVID hit us and when the severe lockdown hit us, we were all sitting at homes and we were all worried as to, what will happen, how do we execute our work, etc. But thanks again to the technology and the technological, they stood up to the challenges and they made it possible that we could virtually connect with each other, and even the data flow of the auditee to the auditor was flowing through the technology, and thereby the auditing did not stop. The financial statement did not stop, the work did not stop, the business did not stop, everything went on. So that's thanks to technology. So I think we must put our word of appreciation to them as well. And now, as we are living in the new normal world, it's a hybrid of both, work from home and at the same time harness technology to best, render the service to the world at large. Thank you.
The fact that we have a lot of delegates watching it online as well talks about the new normal, right? The other new normal, Mr. Sanyal, which we saw during the pandemic was this growing clamor for cryptocurrency. You briefly mentioned FTX. We have been talking about the fallout there. A massive news headline that we have been reading in last couple of days. What's happening here in terms of cryptocurrency being an asset class? Then we are seeing the downfall without an underlying. What is the government's outlook on this one? And what is your idea of accountancy when it comes to the FTX saga, so to say?
So let me say that, first of all, the term cryptocurrency itself is an oxymoron. It's not a currency at all. At best, you can call it an asset, but let's be clear about what it really is. You see, it's a combination of two things. One is blockchain technology, and the other is algorithmic issuance. Now, let's be clear that blockchain technology is potentially a useful technology. But what is it? It's basically a decentralized accounting ledger system, right? You can ledger anything with it. It's got, in itself, it does not generate cryptocurrencies at all. The so-called crypto assets or currencies are generated ultimately because of the issuance of a certain token by an algorithm. Now, people get very excited by an algorithm, but in fact, algorithm is just an equation that functions in a particular preset sort of way. You could even have the simplest of algorithms, which are almost difficult to break. I mean, for example, you could say today's date. You will issue only those number of tokens per according to the date of the years of that day. So today could be today is the 20th, so you could say 20112022 tokens will be issued today. Now that's an almost unbreakable algorithm, but that doesn't mean it's something very brilliant. So first of all, remember that there's nothing very deep about an algorithm. And that algorithm then generates these tokens. You're putting a price to it, and these tokens are ledgered using blockchain. These algorithmic issuance is where the problem is, because there is no control on it. Nobody knows who issues them. And in any case, there is no link between that issuance and any basket of goods or anything, which is why I said it's not a currency at all. It has to have some linkage to, a basket of goods or price or something. It doesn't. So in that context, it is very clear that we should not treat cryptocurrencies as a currency. In fact, one can debate whether it is even an asset, but at the very least, one can say that let's say, if you treat it like an asset, then at the very least, you need to impose some serious taxes on it, because, when you have other assets being traded and you have capital gains, we tax it. So I'm not a big fan of cryptocurrencies. I'm usually uncomfortable banning anything. That's true of everything. But I do think it's something that we need to impose very strict controls on, or certainly tax it very heavily. And that is basically what we have done. The Reserve Bank, of course, is of the view that it should be banned altogether. And I wouldn't dismiss it, because there are clearly great amount of suspicions as far as the issuance part of it is. But do not get confused the usefulness of blockchains with algorithmic issuance. They are different things. Now comes the last issue, I'm sure you want to know, is CBDC. Yeah, now this is what it really is. Take a rupee. Rupee is issued in many formats. You issue a rupee in a coin form, you issue it in paper form, you issue it in electronic form, it's in your banks or in your electronic wallets. So we already have digital currencies. By the way, the term digital currency is very often used for these algorithms. The money you have in your bank is already digital. We will also issue it in a blockchain format. Nothing very deep about it. So first of all, don't get too excited about this. Does not change in any way the nature of the rupee. All it does, it creates a new format in which it becomes available. And yes, new technologies may allow this rupee then to be used in different ways, but it's still a rupee. So do not confuse technological progress from metal to paper to digital to blockchain with the progress in the economic idea of a currency, which algorithmic issuance totally does not change. And so let me be clear once again before I hand it back to you, is that a cryptocurrency is not a currency at all. It is a fairly arbitrary token issued by an algorithm, and there is no great technological breakthrough has been made in recent years into that algorithm. Just like we don't allow random people to issue their own tokens as currency, there is no reason to believe we should just allow something that's because it's called an algorithm.
Mr. Khara, you agree with what Mr. Sanyal said, and also your outlook or your take on the digital currency which the RBI recently issued?
Well, I think when it comes to currency, it has to have the two attributes at least. One is the store of value, and second is the medium of exchange. So when it comes to a currency which is having its roots in the algorithm, and also which is actually leveraging a technology, perhaps when it comes to store of value, it does not have any store of value. And it may be used for medium of exchange, but medium of exchange should also be something which should be sustainable. We have already seen the kind of value depreciation which has happened in the cryptocurrencies, which has actually lost the confidence of many into this particular instrument. So I think it is more speculative in nature. It is very, very speculative in nature. And perhaps it may not be a good idea to give it a term of currency. Even I don't believe in that. When it comes to central bank digital currency, rightly, I fully agree and subscribe to the viewpoint that currency is issued in many forms. And of course, we already have, in some form, we had introduced the e-rupee some time back, which was essentially intended for using it for giving the vaccination to the identified population group. So in that respect, so we had some tokens which are issued. So we had already tested it. Now recently, the central bank digital currency pilot, which was launched, We have already seen that it was uh, for the treasury settlement, we have used it. I think eventually this is something which will go a long way in terms of addressing the needs of the economy, and more so when we are moving towards formalization. I think more and more CBDCs would be in use as compared to the currency. This is what my belief is.
Okay, interesting take. Mr. Kose, I have to ask you, not particularly about what your idea would be on cryptocurrency, but do you think this will have some impact on the global economy, so to say? We are talking about the big FTX fall. Is this something that the economists are worried about globally?
Now, when we think about the volume of this market, obviously there has been a significant growth over the past, especially 5 years. Is it a systemic threat? No. Is it something that will require serious regulation? Yes. Are there some conceptual issues in terms of whether these are really currencies or not? Yes, there are serious conceptual issues. In a nutshell, what we have here, euphoria is way ahead of reality, and I think recent developments put a clear brake on the development of this sector. The bigger challenge when we think about 2023, how at the global level interest rates are going to evolve, how global inflation is going to respond. Let me briefly talk about that. Now, there is significant momentum around the world, including in India, to get ahead of inflation and control inflation before it becomes more persistent. As I mentioned, growth is also slowing. When you have weak growth, especially in advanced economies, and elevated inflation, you always worry about whether stagflation is coming back, this toxic combination of weak growth and high inflation. The last time when we had a period of stagflation in the 70s, early 80s, that was a really troubling episode for developing economies. In the United States, the Federal Reserve did not have the type of inflation targeting mandate. It ended up basically increasing interest rates very rapidly at the end of 70s. Of course, that triggered a recession in the United States, but as well as a global recession in 1982. That recession also marked the beginning of Latin American debt crisis and debt crisis in a number of low-income countries. When we look at the levels of debt around the world, we have seen the fastest, broadest debt accumulation over the past decade, what we saw in history. And now, of course, when you would like to roll over your debt obligations, you would like to make sure you have friendly financing conditions and you have the ability to generate growth. In 2023, generating growth will be more difficult and financing conditions will be tighter. So we are worried about we will have financial stress episodes, especially in frontier markets, especially in low-income countries. It's going to be critical to monitor these developments and for policymakers to undertake the necessary measures, given that we will have a much more difficult external environment waiting for us next year.
So 2023 could be a year of slower growth. Mr. Vikamsa, in that scenario, since we are all accountants gathered here today, and we are talking about the opportunities plus the challenges that this community could see, say in 2023, 2024, in the volatile environment, what according to you could be the challenges? And when we are talking about convergence of global accounting standards, or say the government accounting standards, what could be the ideology, or say what could be the changes that could be made here?
So I'm glad you asked this question. I mentioned about the challenging times of COVID, where how we overcame those challenges in rendering services. Now, by virtue of that, and by virtue of thanks to the technology platform, now the world can be your stage, because if you can render service through internet and through technology from sitting anywhere and not going to the physically to the office of the client, your boundary of rendering service no longer remains within your own city or your own state or your own country. It could go globally as well, because we all speak the same language of accounting standards, the auditing standards, the ethical standards, and the education standard. And therefore, no matter whether an accounting is sitting in, say, Zimbabwe and rendering a service in London, he can do so, thanks to the technology and thanks to the fact that you need not visit physically and render service there. Now, you came to the point of government accounting, and I'm very glad that you asked it. The minister also raised that issue. Let me inform the members as well as worldwide, and for the benefit of the political class, for the benefit of economists, and Sanjeev is sitting with us, one of the renowned economists, accountants, we should all come together and unite. And for your information, there is an international public sector accounting standards, which are formulated by IPSASB, what you call the International Public Sector Accounting Board, which is under the umbrella of IFAC. Now, this is the contribution of the accounting profession to the world. Now, what is this IPSAS? They are public sector accounting standards. Now, let's not confuse public sector. In India, we use the word public sector with public sector undertakings. But that's not the case. These public sector means the governmental accounting, the public accounting. So be it the city governments, be it the state governments, be it the federal government, their accounting. So they typically account in single entry method. What is received by the government during the year, what is spent by them during the year. They don't have a balance sheet. And for your information, countries have adopted IPSAS standard, and have produced a financial statement of the country. Just like you have a financial statement of a corporate where you have income, expense, asset, liabilities, and cash flow statement, New Zealand has presented a balance sheet of the country, what it owns, what it owes, what is its income, what is its expense. Now, as a citizen of this world, am I not entitled to know what my country owns, what it owes, like any other corporate? We talk of transparency, but why restrict it only to the corporate sector? Why not the governments? They should also be, throwing out balance sheets where I can study the balance sheets, criticize it. I will know what is the financial, position of my country, etc. So this is the stage at which we need to go. And if you, like sustainability, for example, now the governments are talking of COP27 and, climate change, etc. Now, who measures it on a country level? You're measuring it on a corporate level. You're telling the corporate, please do a sustainability reporting. That's perfectly fine. I mean, what a corporate does, what's the carbon it is throwing out, what is the, when it become carbon neutral, etc., etc. But what is the country as a whole? Now that also should be measured and transparently disclosed to the world at large. So we must move at that stage. So my appeal to the governments, to the political class, to the economists, and we have a prominent economist sitting over here in the panel as well. We have Ayan, who's the World Bank, vice president. So let this message spread to the governments. Let them take it very seriously. Now, my future generation would like to know what the country is, what it owes, what is the financial state of the country. And therefore, when we are talking of navigating global economy recovery, I think this is one of the very primary things that we set right the accounting of the government as well. Thank you.
Mr. Sanya, your thoughts on that? Especially on that and the ESG clamor that's going on when it comes to accounting and generally globally as well.
So no doubt that, public sector, or as defined as a government, in general government accounting, of course, needs to be always as transparent as possible, as well put together as possible. Not as easy to do, though. It's easy for, say, the central government to do it, relatively speaking. But do remember that the government is made up of not just the central government, but state government, but also local governments and all manner of autonomous bodies. village panchayats, and large amount of expenditure happens at the bottom of the system. And the capacity to do these kinds of accounting is not always there, naturally. So one of the issues will be obviously to leverage technology to be able to do this real time. Incidentally, technology has allowed us to dramatically increase our real-time ability to keep track of the economy manyfold. And during the COVID period, I can tell this from personal experience, at a time where literally every indicator of the economy had broken down, and trying to manage the economy during a lockdown, let's say, using quarterly GDP growth numbers is not feasible. Then we were able to do that with all kinds of new ways of thinking about economic activity. So, for example, we were using electricity data, Google mobility data, data on payment systems, mobile data, mobile usage data, so on and so forth. The point I'm making to you is there are many other ways to keep track of data. Digital technology allows us really interesting ways of thinking about the economy. Of course, public accounts in the narrow sense also need to be looked at. And again, technology can be leveraged for that. But there are many other ways in which we can think about how to manage the economy. And accountancy needs to, like every other profession, upgrade itself to begin to think about using newer parameters of managing whatever it is they're managing, a corporate or an economy or whatever it is. Now, in this context, a new group of sort of indicators have come of interest, which is the ESG, the environment, social governance indicators. They're different in the sense that, unlike the much more objective accounting that needed to be done so far, and so, there is, of course, the financial accounts, which are hopefully objective, and even many of the other indicators are relatively more objective, even if you take, quantity measures. But many of these other ones, like social and governance indicators, are by their very nature fuzzy and subjective. Now, it's not that they are not important. They're absolutely important, and that is why we have begun to bring them into the conversation. But let me also say that we need to be very, very careful about them, because there are some serious issues with them. For example, take India's case. There are a whole bunch of these indicators generated by well-known Western think tanks on things like freedom or democracy and so on. And you'll find that India does suspiciously badly in them in recent years. Now, this is clearly a reflection of political opinions of a few so-called experts. There is no reflection of reality. I mean, I'll name some of them, by the way. It's worth doing that. Whether it's EIU or VDEM or Freedom House, these kinds of institutions have obviously certain kinds of political ideology and agenda embedded in the way they operate. Now, it is not fair to use these indicators brought out by this extremely narrow group of Western think tanks with a certain ideology and impose it on us. This is a form of neocolonization. And in fact, I'm about to publish tomorrow a working paper on this, so hopefully do look it up, where we'll show you the sheer absurdity of some of the ways in which these opinions are brought together and presented as facts and rankings, which have, by the way, real implications. So bringing the ESG into the conversation has real implications, but it already has real implications. The three indicators I mentioned find their way into the World Bank's World Governance Indicators, which in turn impacts today already our sovereign ratings. And yet the World Bank needs to really question these think tanks about what is the way in which they arrive at these indicators. Some of them are utterly absurd. And this monopoly of Western narrative needs to be questioned too. So let me give you an illustration of how this is skewed. Let's take, we have a democracy index. Surely, The first and obvious question you need to ask is the head of state of the related country have an elected head of state? Now, you would argue that's a reasonable question to ask in a democracy indicator. It's not asked. Why is it not asked? Because it would impact the whole bunch of Northern European constitutional monarchies who do not have democratically elected heads of state. So this question is simply dropped. And you end up with these bizarre indicators on vague things that lead to outcomes which are, let me give you another example. Freedom House places Northern Cyprus higher than us on the democracy index. Now just think about it. Northern Cyprus is not only not recognized by the UN, it's not recognized by any country other than Turkey. It has carried out ethnic genocide against its local Greek population. And yet it is considered higher up in the democracy index of Freedom House. And this is what feeds into the World Bank's World Governance Index. I'm sorry, this is not acceptable. Thank you.
Okay, so I've been told that we are out of time, but this has been very interesting discussion. But before I wrap, I would really like the other three dignitaries to come up with their closing remarks. You're talking about navigating the global economic recovery. Your thoughts just on how India has been resilient on that. And Mr. Kose, how do you see the developing economies when it comes vis-a-vis the developed world right now in this present scenario? Mr. Khara, let me start with you.
Well, I think when it comes to the global economic recovery, perhaps India is going to be, it will certainly take a lead because we have already proven to the world at large that it is the most resilient economy in the recent past. When rest of the globe is going through its turbulence, perhaps it stays its course. And I think with that kind of a situation and the oil inflation being restricted the way it is already, we have already seen, perhaps the kind of growth opportunities which India will offer will be looked up by rest of the globe, and it will certainly help the rest of the globe also to move up in terms of the growth.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Kose. Your closing remarks on this?
Thank you. So it's going to be important for central banks to continue what they started and make sure they can deliver their mandates. Without price stability, it's not possible to have macroeconomic stability. So while doing that, they need to make sure they take into account the implications of their policies for other countries. In an environment, everybody is increasing interest rates, the likelihood of financial stress also increases. So the regulatory bodies have to be on top of basically the issues related to balance sheet mismatches, and there is significant amount of that on the private sector in many countries that needs to be monitored. On the fiscal side, this is not a time to basically try to, of course, stimulate the economy. This is a time to complement the monetary policy with the types of policies that are going to be conducive to moderate inflation. Of course, governments have to consider the implications of their policies for sustainability in an environment when you have weak growth and elevated interest rates. At the same time, targeted measures for segments of the society, especially low-income segments, are also in order. I already talked about the kind of the problems in the context of food insecurity. And finally, there is excessive focus on demand-side policies, but there are important supply-side policies we need to pay attention to. Every crisis presents an opportunity. I think this crisis is presenting us an opportunity to accelerate energy transition and find more diverse sources of energy. So let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for those comments. Mr. Vikamse, you've been a veteran in the accounting industry. Your closing comments as we wrap this particular panel for the World Congress of Accountants.
So thanks for asking. And as far as navigating the global economic recovery, from the accounting profession is concerned, and I can speak for all the worldwide accountants, that we are ready for the challenges. Number one, we provide assurance service to the world at large, to the corporates, which run the entire capital markets for the capital raising and all kinds of capital market activities. We will continue to do that with a more vigor. And as was discussed in this conference, sustainability is an extremely important subject which the accounting profession has taken upon itself to develop accurate measurement of those as far as corporates are concerned, to report them so that there can be easy comparability and proper reflection of what the corporates are doing as far as sustainability is concerned. Coming on the revenue side, the accountants also play a very important role in the economy, because if you see, the government is on one side of collection of taxes, be it direct tax, indirect tax. On the other side is always accountants. It's not, businesses cannot comply with those complicated tax laws, and therefore, I can say with great pride, and Mr. Sanyal will bear me out, that if on the one side of collections of lakhs of crores in the budgets of the governments is the government side, administration and collection of tax, on the other side, the people who are helping the businesses pay their taxes is the accountants. So we worldwide accountants must take the pride that we have a very, very important role in the contribution to the economies, which we will continue to contribute. Thank you.
Okay, let's hope this community continues to grow with collaboration, of course. No competition there. Mr. Sanyal, Mr. Khara, Mr. Kose, Mr. Vikram say thank you so much for joining us and taking this discussion forward. With that, it's a wrap, and thank you all for being a wonderful audience as well.
Thank you very much for the engaging panel discussion. We'd like to present a memento of thank you to each one of you. Let me invite on stage CA Kotha S. Srinivas, respected Central Council member, ICI, to please present a memento to CA Sonal Bhutra Balu first for moderating the session. Thank you very much, CA Sonal. I'd like to invite CA Purushottam Khandelwal, respected Central Council member, ICI, to please come up on the stage. Can I request CA Raj Chawla ji to please step forward and present a memento of thank you to Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, Member, Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. Just step forward so that our media friends can capture a better picture. Thank you, Sanjeev ji. So like Sanjeev ji said, cryptocurrency is not a currency, maybe an asset. If it's an asset, then taxability of it becomes important. In our budget, we had called it VDA, Virtual Digital Asset. Can I call upon stage CA Abhay Kumar Chhajar, respected Central Council member with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Can I add a cricketer as well, to present a memento of gratitude to Mr. Dinesh Kumar Khara, respected Chairman, State Bank of India. Thank you very much, sir. I'd like to call upon stage CA Gyan Chandra Mishra, respected Central Council member, ICI. CA Anuj Goyal ji, respected Central Council member, ICI. Thank you very much, sir. If you could please do the honors of presenting the token of thank you to Mr. M. Ayan Kose, Chief Economist and Director of Prospects Group, the World Bank Group. Thank you, Anuji, for doing the honors. Can I request CA Rajkumar Adukia ji, respected Central Council member, ICI, to please do the honors and present the memento of gratitude to CA Kamlesh S. Vikamse, past President, ICI. And like Amreshji says, I think one round of applause once again to the doctors, nurses, scientists who gave us the vaccine, all the corona warriors. It is thank you to them that we could have this conference where we have delegates not only in person, it's a hybrid, so both virtual and person. Thank you very much. Thank you. Coming up next,